Police Officer Gary Steele, the 18-year veteran, using the pre-made app captions what Black Girl Magic looks like and celebrating Black History Month after pulling over Ariel Moore.
All the extra comments and putting me on social media, that wasn't called for. You know, we're in 2019 and it's still going on.
Moore, who was stopped while driving through Detroit for expired tags and driving without insurance, had her car impounded. Moore was recorded walking home as Officer Steele and his partner made what the police chief calls troubling comments.
Bye, Felicia.
I'm angry because this was a grossly insensitive post. This is not what we expect of Detroit police officers.
Officer Steele, who has not responded to our request for comment, has been demoted and reassigned. In 2008, he pled guilty to a misdemeanor after he was charged with attacking his ex-girlfriend and firing a gun.
Tonight, Detroit's top cop calls this video an outrage, one that could cost the officer his job. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
Hey, NBC News.
And you can actually see, family, that this should cost him his job.
Yeah, it should.
Because we know that people make mistakes, right? We know that people make errors. Okay, so she was driving her car and she should, there's more to this story, by the way. I'm sure that we're going to hear more about the circumstances by which she ended up driving her car in that situation, right? She's not within her right to do that. We can recognize that she was doing something wrong, but then to continue to try to dehumanize her based on her gender, based on her African heritage, shows us the kind of intent, the kind of racist animus that the police continually display to our women. And let's be clear, why is he recording someone who he has an encounter with and putting it on social media at all?
Because we have a president that does that.
Because this is the standard comes from the top down. Sister Brenda says because that's the kind of work that our president does. This is a disturbing reality. And so when I saw this, and I saw this sister walking in the zero, in below zero temperatures, sometimes I actually feel like, who are the people that are supposed to assist us when we're in these dire straits? Who could she have called that would have at least given her a ride home, that could have monitored the interaction with the police? This is the kind of thing that continues to happen. And so I was absolutely appalled at this. And as I said, this was really, really the straw that broke the camel's back. Because so many other things have happened. This reminds me of so many other things that we should be concerned about with regard to how African women are being treated. I had to remember that there was that moment last year where there was an outcry on social media about the number of Black children, particularly women and girls, who were missing in Washington, D.C. And let me say to you that it seems clear now that some of what was reported actually was misreported. There was the belief that 11 Black girls went missing in a one-day period. And it seems now that that is not what happened, that someone misinterpreted something. And so what happens when Black folks get outraged about something and we realize that it is not exactly the way that we thought? First of all, the rest of the community, the rest of the nation looks at us like, look at these silly Negroes. So that we end up looking like we are concerned about something be concerned about, like we're overly emotional, when in actuality the reason why there was such outcry around this is because we know what happens to Black women. If we can only respond affirmatively, in fact maybe even go over in most of the situations where Black women and girls are missing. I wish we went overboard. I wish that we got so concerned that after we recovered those babies, we would realize that maybe there weren't as many missing as we thought. But in actuality, what usually happens is it actually is a story perhaps on a few web pages and then it disappears. And there's no follow-up. We don't know what happens next. The reason why people were so horrified is because this happens regularly. This happens regularly. In fact, as we looked at this story, we actually, the National Crime Information Center reports that while African Americans make up 13% of the people in the US, we tend to be 33.8% of the missing. So that stuff just happens to us and no one goes looking for us. I'll never forget that one of my childhood friends, I'll say her name here for her soul, Nicole Manderville, someone I grew up with, went missing. And her family searched for her for years, for over 10 years. And then they finally found that the police found her body. She was partially disrobed. So they assumed that she was a prostitute and they buried her 2 days after she was missing in Potter's Field, while her parents searched for her for 10 years. This is the kind of treatment that particularly Black women face. When we think about the arm of this racist state that seeks to destroy us, that seeks to continue to subjugate us, we often think about men. And that's true, that Black men have been absolutely the active target of a violent system. But when will we begin to once again think about what is happening for women? And so that is why we have to continue to talk about this. You know, there are over 64,000 Black women in the United States that are currently missing. 64,000. A large number of them are likely being trafficked. Who defends these women? Should we expect there to be defense when we live in a patriarchal society that already devalues Black skin as it is? This is what we are confronting. And then I had to think about the continuing saga of the Chibok girls in Nigeria. This is not just a national crisis, it's a global crisis. How many of you remember what happened here? Nearly 300 Black girls, 300 African young ladies kidnapped from their school in Chibok. This happened in April 2014. One of the reasons why we might have heard this story is because Michelle Obama was extremely disheartened by it and pushed the issue on social media. But I bet most of us don't even know what has happened in the intervening years, because these sorts of things fall from the headlines and we forget about it. Why? Because there is a lower value placed on the life of Black women.
Yes.
If this was one Tomhu girl, the FBI, the CIA, the Nigerian police, whoever would still be looking for her. But we could see literally hundreds of women disappear. And so what happened? We found out that of the 276 girls, 57 of them had escaped in the months after. And since May 2016, at least 106 have been freed and released. In fact, I know that if you look on social media, people hearing about the 106 people have been freed recently think that they've all been released or freed. It has completely fallen from the headlines, entirely fallen from the headlines, when there's still over 100 missing. We know at least that 13 of them have been reported dead. We know that one of them escaped with a child. This is continuing. Where is the outrage? Where are the groups of people who are searching for them? One of the things that Black men do is we go to the military, right? How come none of y'all don't have any weapons looking for these girls? Where's the African SEAL Team 6? Instead, these women are living lives of horror, sheer horror. And ain't nobody talking about it. This pains me. This pains me. And then I saw this story. Did you hear this? This was reported on January 23rd of this year. Nigeria, in some ways, they're still searching for those girls and others. they reported this number. I read this number so many times that I believe I must have misinterpreted it. Nigeria reported on January 23rd of this year that they found more than 20,000 kidnapped girls in Mali. Did you hear what I said? 2 would be horrific. 20 would be absolutely a travesty. 200 would have made international news if they were of another background, ethnicity, economic group. More than 20,000. This was reported on Al Jazeera. Where was it on the cover of the New York Times? The Washington Post.
Daily News.
The Daily News. 20,000. In fact, Nigeria says that the number of women that they might have actually found in this cache might be as high as 45,000. Those numbers are mind-boggling. How many cities in that area have 20,000 residents? You're saying that this is a large city of kidnapped and trafficked women. Who is standing for these women? Where are the stories? Where are the investigative reports? The only outlet I saw this on was Al Jazeera. I didn't see it on CNN, MSNBC, none of those other outlets. Why? Because the lives of Black women are valued less. And so Nigeria actually announced through its National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, they actually announced that they were going to return many of those women from Nigeria. And the overwhelming majority of them came from 6 rural states from Nigeria. They also announced that about 2,000 girls and boys have been abducted by Boko Haram. By the way, you should understand that these are continental Africans who have been infected with the most inappropriate interpretation of one of the Abrahamic traditions, Islam, who are just kidnapping boys and girls. And the overwhelming majority of them have been used as sex slaves. Can you imagine how horrific that is? It would almost be better if they were killed. This is a life of horror. When they return, what sort of emotional, psychological sores will continue to remain? If they return. Nigeria also announced that they found Nigerian victims of sex trafficking in 40 countries. And they say that 80% of all female Nigerian migrants in Italy are or will become sex trafficking victims. A lot of these 20,000 to 45,000 women are being held deep in forest in West Africa. How about the 80% of all these Nigerian migrants in Italy? Where did you hear that story?
No, they're not gonna tell that story.
Being trafficked. This is the reality for African women around the world. And you know I'm going to go there. I know that I have to speak about this because the devaluation of Black women continues as we actually hear about more about the crimes of R. Kelly. And I know that there's some people who have said things like, well, he's also a victim. That is true. It is likely a fact that he was abused. But when someone uses their inordinate power and dollars to abuse women, he needs to be held account. Where's the African SEAL Team 6 busting in his recording studio and freeing people? Where are they? Their brothers all up and down the hood with weapons. Are they only aiming them at each other? And as I look at social media, I hear people say, where are their parents? By the way, that's an issue.
Yeah, it is an issue.
But that's almost like saying he can abuse children,
Right.
and because their parents were not able to free them, we should ignore the abuse of a child. Who would make that argument? We hear about Roman Catholic priests abusing children. I have not once heard anyone say, where are their parents?
Right.
We try to hold those priests to account. But when it comes to black women, everyone else must be held accountable other than the person that is doing it. Where are their parents? Why, I wish another person would say that to me on Facebook. I almost want to drive to them and slap them for saying something so foolish. And if you had actually seen the documentary, which I did not want to watch, the amount of information that's come forward about someone who we know has been abusing women. We've known this for 25 years. If you didn't know it with Aaliyah, you must have known it when the tape started coming out. How do we not know this? How does it continue and persist? Why are people saying, I'ma still play his music? Well, you're a slave. You don't need to have chains on your arms or on your feet to be a slave, because now they've been moved into your mind and into your soul. For you to think that you're going to celebrate him because he makes good music. What does that have to do with him abusing women? Those two things are not related. We have to do something. And other people say, well, the media has been trying to tear down black entertainers forever. Well, some entertainers do some things that we have to. So does that mean because white folk have been doing bad things to black people that we could just give somebody a pass? Is that what you're saying? What are you saying exactly? It has been a really rough period for black women. Really rough period. I know that Chance the Rapper made a comment. He apologized for working with R. Kelly, and he actually said that he realizes that perhaps he wasn't valuing black women as much as he should have been. That we see black women and girls as over-sexualized. That has its roots in our enslavement.
Yes, it does.
That we see black women and girls as adults when they're girls. That has its roots in enslavement.
Yeah.
We're still there. And then he even said, well, you know, I think if they were lighter skinned victims, somebody would say something. As painful as those words were, is he right?
Yes, he is. It's sad, but it's true.
And then the sister talking to him said, well, the color is not part of it. Because he abused women of all different hues and shades. We watched him. I know this is a spiritual session, but I must say this. We watched him urinate on a child. Those videos were being sold all over the hood. You could get one on 125th Street. And he's still singing and dancing and earning cash. What the hell is wrong with us? We should expect that 20,000 women could go missing in a world that devalues black women in this way. What role have we played? I don't care if you danced to his song when you were in kindergarten, or that at your parents' reunion, y'all was stepping in the name of love. That's irrelevant. We have to do something. And I'm going to say this quickly. I honestly believe that one of the reasons why this persists is because we are still ensconced in traditions that are patriarchal. And when I say this, my brothers and sisters who are Christian, my brothers and sisters who call themselves Hebrew Israelites, my brothers and sisters who actually say that they are in the Hebrew community, really get angry at this. Don't get angry at me, get angry at your text. Don't say I'm going to hell if the text you said is hell that you're reading has some hellish things about women. Let's look really quickly. In this book that we call the Bible, we should know that women are not supposed to have voices. This is according to the text, saying that women adorn themselves in modest apparel with shamefacedness and sobriety, not with broidered hair or gold or pearls or costly array. Let women learn in silence with all subjection. But I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over a man, but to be in silence. For Adam was first formed, then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was in transgression. Notwithstanding, she shall be saved in childbearing, if they continue in faith and charity and holiness with sobriety. That is 1 Timothy 2, 9 to 15. This is the text.
Yeah.
It's not my opinion. This is the text, that women should be silent. In fact, I'm going to say this clearly. All you got to do is go to Pastor Shabazz at a large church just a few blocks from here. He has a routine commentary on the role of women. He has clearly said women should not be able to speak in church. I'm not talking about people you don't know. That church is on 127th Street and Malcolm X Boulevard. It is literally a short walk from where I stand. He is talking right now. At this moment, he is speaking. This is the tradition that many of our family members are still in. I speak to them with love. If I was speaking to them with venom, I'd be aiming venom at my own mother, my father, my family who are Christians. But we have to do something differently. Let's go further. There's tons of challenges with female sexuality in the Christian tradition. This comes from Leviticus 21:9 and Genesis 38:24. And the daughter of any priest, if she profane herself by playing the whore, she profaneth her father. She shall be burnt with fire. Sometimes when I talk to the Hebrew brothers, they say, well, our tradition is more powerful because we have laws. We have to remind them that that's in your laws, brother. We have laws that tell us how to behave. So do you burn women who you think are actually enacting their sexuality? You burn them? Really? Those are your laws, brother. They start getting sweaty and red-faced when I talk to them when they do that. This is a challenge that we have. How about more in Deuteronomy? Then they shall bring out the damsel to the door of her father's house, and men of her city shall stone her with stones that she die, because she hath wrought folly in Israel to play the whore in her father's house. So shall those put evil away from among you. Now they're saying that if a woman engages in intercourse outside of marriage, let's even say that she's a woman that is having lots of intercourse. Let's even go to the worst possible definition. She should be stoned to death. That's in Deuteronomy. This is the tradition that we're looking at. How about women being married to their rapist? Isn't that what we're seeing with Boko Haram? That's what we're seeing. Here's once again from Deuteronomy. If a man find a damsel that is a virgin, which is not betrothed, in other words, she's a virgin that is not engaged, and lay hold on her and lie with her, and they be found, then the man that lay with her shall give unto the damsel's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he hath humbled her. He may not put her away all his days. So women should be married to their rapist. They should be paid, their father should receive 50 shekels. I'm not even sure what else to say to you, family. I mean, I hope you understand that even when we talk about the 10 Commandments, that they're written to men. Did you know that?
Yeah.
People talk about the 10 Commandments all the time. Well, they are not for women. In fact, women are listed with donkeys and slaves. They are the property of men in that tradition. If this is where we are, we should not be surprised that there's such a low value on women in general and a lower value on women of African descent. We should understand where it comes from. In fact, in the image you're seeing the story of the Levite who sends his concubine. By the way, she is in sexual slavery. The woman escapes in the story. He goes to find her in her father's house, to bring him back to her house. And then eventually when a mob comes to the door, instead of trying to come and get him, by the way, this happens in the Bible at least twice, that mobs are looking to rape men. It's really interesting that happens. He sends his concubine out. They rape her all night long, and he finds her with her hands on the doorstep. Instead of asking for the forgiveness of God, he eviscerates her. He cuts her into pieces. Have you read the book that you say that you stand by? Well, if you're an African, you're out of your right mind. I'm not saying you can't be a Christian, but I'm saying if you're an African in your mind, you better be a different Christian than this. Maybe you should say that there's certain sections of this book that were written by men who were not divinely ordained. We will not use these sections. I'd like to see conscious Africans say that. Because I've seen some Africans on social media just this week saying, why can't I be Christian and conscious? And I actually believe that you can be Christian and conscious, but you got to first deal with the challenge in your own book. Let's see you do that. Brother Augustus, you had your hand raised.
Notice the complexion of what these people are drawn as.
Yes, yes. But let me say to you, this is drawn in the Middle Ages. So this is much later. But let's be clear that even if they wanted to try to blackify this text, which some people do, the reality is even if everyone in the text was African, which we know they were not, the Tomhu, the European, has had his way with that text for 2,000 years. You can't just take it back and now say it's ours. Do you think they just left it the way that you expected it to be? Who decided which books you would read? African, return to yourself. So all of this I see it has been on my mind this last few weeks. It's been painful. I've gotten a little closer to my nieces because I'm thinking about what happens for Black women. And honestly, I should say to you that I had an entire other presentation prepared. And then I got to watching Iyanla Vanzant last night talking about women who had been abused. And I said, this has been on my heart. I have to say something. I have to say something. Because if we are the caretakers of an ancient tradition that views women as divine, just as divine as men, we are the ones that should bring this standard back into existence. It is us. We cannot expect those people who are reading about women being raped, being sold to their rapists by giving their father money. If they are ensconced in those traditions, who should we expect to step forward and speak for African women? It must be us. You can't just stand in the tradition of Ma'at and have it be something you do for yourself so you feel good, so you can do amazing things in the world. Why, it is incumbent upon us to do the work in our community, in our nation, in our world, to return African people to their ancient greatness. It is our responsibility. You have heard me say that practitioners of the Kemetic tradition have for too long been silent. You could walk past a Kemetic shrine and not even know it's there, only for the benefit of the people that are inside its doors. Well, what are we doing for those people outside of our doors? How can we critique these traditions if we're not doing a damn thing? It's time for us to be public. So you know that I have to actually show you some of the words written by your African ancestors that gives you a sense of what the standard used to be. You were looking at an image of Amenhotep III. Say Amenhotep III. One of the most powerful kings in Kemet. One of the most powerful kings probably in human history. This massive head was probably part of an entire body. It's not even in Kemet. It's not even in Africa right now. This is in the British Museum. And you can see that as powerful as he was, he had this wonderful African queen who he said was the most important person in his world. What is her name? Queen T. you see her with this beautiful little sort of African, this little afro she's wearing. Look at her hair. Look at her nose. Look at her lips. This is a serious African woman, by the way. She always has a little bit of a frown on her face. Like she's seen a lot of stuff and done a lot of stuff. We know that Queen T was actually almost like the Secretary of State. She would go abroad and come into agreements with foreign peoples for the Kemetic Empire. Very powerful, important woman, Queen T. And we know that Amenhotep actually created this statue of himself and his wife seated at the same height with their eyes aligned. Because he's saying, this woman is my equal. This is the tradition you come from, African. This is before you got confused. Let's even be fairer. This is before the Tom who forced his traditions on you and took you out of your mind, having you actually leave your own mother astray, devalue your daughters, and forget your own wives. In fact, we know that during this time, something interesting was happening. There were foreign peoples who were trying to come into agreement with the Kemetic Empire during Amenhotep III's reign. And so what they would do is they would send their daughters to become part of the Kemetic kingdom. One king, I think his name was Tashurata, actually sent 270 women to become part of the Kemetic Empire. Because obviously if you send your daughters and someone else sends their daughters, then you're not going to go to war because you're family. So they kept sending women to Kemet. And Amenhotep III accepted them. And then eventually they realized that the flow was one way. So they write a letter. This is a letter coming from the Babylonian king, Kadashman. And it's in, if you want to look for it, it's in the Amarna letters 4EA is what it's usually listed as. You have to understand that as he sends the letter to Amenhotep III, he says, hey man, what gives? I'm sending you all these women, you're not sending any to me. And so Amenhotep III responds, from time immemorial, no daughter of a king of Kemet is given to anyone. You can be polite and send your ladies here, but our women remain with their families. How did we get so confused? I think Amenhotep III was a little confused when the guy complained. He was like, I'm sending my daughters to you. They're my daughters.
That's right.
That goes to show they don't have no value of women.
That's right.
Women are property.
That's right. By the way, we don't even have the name for the Babylonian king's queen, by the way, because they didn't record it. In ancient Kemet from time immemorial, as Amenhotep says, we know the names of the kings and queens, because even at the level of royalty, a king has a queen. And we know their names. We know what they did. We know what family they came from. In the traditions of other people, maybe you might know the name of the king, but he didn't mention any of the women around him. Why even ask yourself that when Noah goes onto the ark with his sons, it says their wives were with them. They don't tell you their names because they're irrelevant. This is the tradition that we have found ourselves in. How about the first law, the first maxim of Ptahhotep, the world's oldest complete book? He gives us 37 laws to live by, live in Ma'at. This African with his African nose and his African lips and his African hair. What does he say in the first thing that he says? He says, be not arrogant with your wisdom. The greatest knowledge can be found amongst the women toiling at the millstone. Yes, man, with all of your education and your dollars, recognize that the wisest among you are those women that are doing hard work every day. If this is the way that you look at women, you have value for men and women. And those people who look at our tradition from the outside sometimes say, well, you know, that the people that are into the Kemetic tradition say that black woman is a god. Black woman is a god. Well, I want to be clear. We do say that, but we're trying to say those that we are both divine.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why they only hear women is because to them, that's the part that sounds most bizarre. That's why they hear that. We are saying that black women are divine, and so are black men. That we are divine. That is balance. That is ma'at. But they have so long been listening to the snide responses of the Tomhu that they can't even hear their own voices anymore. That's where we are. Take a look at this statue. You know that for those folks who have actually been initiated, you know that I show you this statue all the time. In fact, sometimes I'm putting it into stuff and I just take it out. I'm like, I can't talk about this statue every day, but it is literally one of my favorite pieces. It is a statue of Pepe II. Say Pepe II.
Pepe II.
And he is sitting on his mother's lap. And as he sits on her lap, you can see that you're actually seeing him sit on her lap. Aunt Nesamun, by the way, is his mother's name. He's sitting on her lap, and he's actually an adult. You see, he might look like a child, but if you look closely, he has a crown on. He's an adult, but he's tiny. He's diminutive on his mother's lap. In some ways, there are two statues here. The one that looks at him facing forward, and the one that looks at her facing forward. But this, the most powerful man in the world at his time. In fact, he is the man that has been in power more than any other ruler in the history of the world. He stands on the throne for 90 years. There is no ruler that has ever been on the throne of any nation longer than him. But he reminds us that he is nothing but a child on his mother's lap. In fact, his mother is his throne. Well, black man, if you want to get into your greatness, you better recognize that the black woman is your throne. That you cannot ascend to kingship without your queen. That is the challenge that we have when we come away from who we actually are and listen to the words of outside people. Family, I want to say to you, as I conclude, that it is of critical importance for us to defend the virtue, the life, the value of black women. Now, we know that black men have been devalued and murdered and shot down in the street, but we've forgotten to talk about the things that are happening to black women. The abuse that they face, the just basic inequities that black women face. And we have to remember that if we are trying to return to the throne, we must not forget our mothers. And we must recognize that in our women, we see our divine reflection, our mates. And if you cannot see them in their proper place, you cannot see yourself in your proper place. That if you just see sexual objects, then in fact you are a large penis. That's what you are. You must remember that if we cannot defend those among us that give birth, we cannot even defend our children. Let's not forget to talk about our sisters, especially at this time when we are seeing some of the most disturbing things befall them. Practitioners of Ma'at, I implore you to step forward and to stand up for women. And not even care what people say about us, because you know those people who don't understand our traditions will be confused about what that means. They're confused because they have been led astray by our oppressors. We have to instruct them and speak to them with love, even though they do not speak to us with love. We have to help them return to who they actually are, even though they don't even recognize that the chains have been removed from their hands and their feet and now been placed on their souls. It is our responsibility, beloved. It is the only way that we will be able to do the things that we have been sent here to do. So with that, I say the divine force in me greets the divine force in you. I've gotten a little bit of it off my heart, but it's still heavy. Hopefully we'll continue to talk about how we will be publicly supporting each other so that we can once more be powerful again. Well, you may have noticed that Anika is not with us today. She's a bit under the weather. So we usually close with an affirmation. Can I ask this? Does someone want to do that? Does not have to be in the Kemetic language, or it could be. You want to assist us with that? Sen Kepra? Please stand. Do it. Listen, old school is as good as new school. Let's do it. So please stand in a position of adoration. Amasu in pa in terror. Atua uma ketipa. Heru.
Give yourself to the one most high.
Give yourself to the one most high.
Keep yourself daily for the one most high.
Keep yourself daily for the one most high.
And do it tomorrow.
And do it tomorrow.
As you do it today.
As you do it today. And folks, you'll know that obviously, as our minister Vernon says, one of our Hemsenu says, we don't do this for money, but we can't do it without money. We need money to do it. I just messed it up. We don't do this for money, but we need money to do it. So please make a donation to the Shrine of Ma'at. You can do it on our PayPal. You can just go to shrineofma'at.me and make a donation. Please make a donation so we're able to do this and continue to do this. So we're able to continue to enlighten our people. I'm gonna pass the basket around. If y'all can share in the basket, dwa, dwa, dwa. Family, I should also announce before we leave very closely, quickly, because I know that we have some family members who actually are on the West Coast. I will actually be part of a wonderful conference that is called Kemet in the Desert, that is going to be held in Las Vegas from February 21st to February 23rd. My understanding is that my dear brothers Red and Blue Pill will be there as well. I'm looking forward to it. For those of you who are on the West Coast, this might be the next time I'm on the West Coast, or at least close enough to you. So we would love to see you. We have members of our Hemsenu that are in that area as well. Please come out if you can. Look for Kemet in the Desert, and you'll actually see, you'll get more information. We'll post it on our social media as well, so you can get connected to it. Particularly, I'm talking to Lisa and Garrett, who are such an important part of our shrine, but are often so far away that we're not able to spend time with them in person. I'm looking to spend time with y'all. I hope you can come out during that time so we can spend time with you. And for those of you who are interested, understand that in order to be a member of the Shrine of Ma'at, a full member, you don't necessarily have to be in the Harlem area or in the surrounding area. We have members, full members, who are not even on the same coast, who spend a lot of time across the seas and other places. We will be announcing initiation probably by the end of the year, because we are about to begin our priesthood training. If you are interested in priesthood training, you have to reach out to us. Remember, you should likely be an initiated member of the Shrine of Ma'at. But in addition to that, let's say you were initiated in another Kemetic house. You might request to be part of the priesthood of the Shrine of Ma'at. But of course, you'll have to meet a bit of a higher bar to be able to be admitted. We're looking to actually have those people who are part of the priesthood help us continue to build the Shrine of Ma'at. And so that is what we are seeking to do. So with that, I'd say Ankh and Ma'at, Shem and Matep, go forward in peace. As I always say, you gotta go home, and you don't have to get out of here. Please, you can stay, get to know each other, get to meet each other. We have some faces that we don't see quite as often. And for the folks in-house, please go ahead and greet each